we can start the session now.
Assalamu alaikum all. Welcome everyone to Apps UK Symposium, which is a guide to the audits, research and publications for all our junior doctors. Basically, the reason we are holding this symposium is to guide our junior doctors to how they can build up their CV with their research projects. These projects, they are always given a lot of weightage in all job interviews, and has otherwise as well in our clinical studies and in our continuing medical education. These projects, they have a lot of importance. We were going to have 3 speakers today, but unfortunately due to some unavoidable circumstances, Dr. Afsham will not be able to join us. However, we have Dr. Safir Ahmed and Dr. Sara Masroor Jilani. They are going to cover all the topics that we had decided to cover. Just a few words about Apps UK. As you all know, this is the leading organization of the Pakistani doctors in the UK and all over the world. And basically, the aim for this association is to bring all our doctors together, help each other to build up our career and to build up medical expertise back home in Pakistan as well. So basically, I'll start off with Dr. Safir Ahmed Javed. Just a few words about him. Sorry, I'm sorry, I forgot to introduce Dr. Syed Ali Raza. He's the co-host for this symposium with me. He's a consultant oncologist at Northwick Park Hospital in London and a very active member of Apps. And we also have Mr. Usman Amir Khan. He's also one of our very senior members of the Apps. So starting off with Dr. Safir Ahmed, shall we start off with the first speaker?
Yeah, Dr. Chaman Roj, we just want to tell our audience about the theme of this symposium. So we are always into exams and for our career, but we miss this most important part of our career progression and portfolio, that is research and audits. Audits also help us to improve our clinical practice, and which research help us to identify new things which we can implement in our clinical practice. We have these amazing speakers today, and we have intentionally brought these young speakers for you so that they can simplify the things for our audience. So we can start our first talk from Dr. Safir Ahmed. Dr. Chaman, you can give the introduction of Dr. Safir Ahmed.
Sure. So Dr. Safir Ahmed is one of our very significant speakers. He's working currently in Queen's Elizabeth Hospital as a STR in general surgery. And today he's going to speak about how to start a clinical audit even when you're outside of the UK, and why do we need audits basically, and how it can improve our portfolio. So over to you, Dr. Safir, please.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chaman. My name is Safir Ahmed Javed, as she told you. So the first thing is why we need an audit, what is an audit, and how we can proceed with it. Clinical audits are in the UK clinical system, medical system since late 1800s. Okay, so by the definition, it is a clinical audit is a quality improvement process that was introduced by to the NHS by the 1889 white paper for the patient. Previously, it was known as medical audit unit and was changed in early 1990s. Clinical audits or quality improvement projects, they are there to improve the delivery of healthcare facilities to the patients. Okay, they are widely practiced in the UK, and every clinical lead, every clinical authority will emphasize on them because it is a benchmark for the improvement of the department or a hospital or as a medical health professional, whether you are in surgery, medicine, oncology, in whichever specialty you are. So why is, as I told you, why we need to do it? The basic goal of clinical audits is evaluation of performance against established standards. So what do we mean by established standards? Established standard means, for example, let's say that we have a nice guideline. Okay, the nice guideline about keeping patient nil by mouth. Okay, let's say it's 2 hours for liquids and 6 hours for solid diet. Now the question is why we are doing it 2 hourly and 6 hourly. Okay, then the question will come up. Okay, there were researches went on, and that's why we do it on the basis of 2 hours and 6 hours. However, if we go a little back, and especially in third world countries, we still do nil by mouth for 12 hours, like right at the start of year, like 12 by 12 a.m. we put patients on nil by mouth and we wait till the 8 p.m. or whenever the surgery is going to be started. But why UK came up with this plan? Because the researches were done, and to evaluate the performance of researches, are they good, or is there any benefit of keeping patient nil by mouth for 4 6 hours or 2 hours? They do clinical audits, okay, to evaluate in which center it is, in whichever center is implemented, what are the results coming out of it. This is the easiest explanation that I can give you with an example. So the other question that comes into the mind, that after, how to start an audit then? If you are in UK, you will be well supported and you have multiple options to start an audit. However, things are very different in other countries. Okay, I can speak about the country where I come from. It's Pakistan. I'll give you an idea on both sides of the world. So firstly, if you're in the UK, what you have to do is you have to speak with your clinical audit lead, consultant in charge, or head of a department. Okay, then why you speak to them? Because you have identified a problem. You have a problem that this system is not working efficiently. We have to change something about it, or we have to evaluate whether this is the right approach or not. So you take that problem, a proposal to them, that this is my plan, this is what I have found out, this is the current guideline, we are adhering to it or not adhering to it. So this is what I want to evaluate. Okay, then you take that proposal to the clinical audit department, they approves it. Before going to them, you have to complete the audit proposal form. Every trust has a different side of audit, different type of audit proposal forms. So you need to download from your internet or your local trust HR department. You can medical staffing. You can take that audit proposal form, or from your local audit department, and you have to fill it. And you have to name a consultant, okay, as a lead author, because the department runs under them. The other thing is, it varies from trust to trust, from hospital to hospital. Some trusts are okay with you doing audit on your own. Okay, some trust needs a registrar level person to supervise you in an audit, and some trust needs a lead consultant or a consultant to supervise you. However, if you are in Pakistan or in India, what you can do is, it's quite tricky out here. So what you can do is, you can download a nice guideline, or American Society of Surgeons guideline, or American Association of Surgeons guideline, if they are coming up with something new. And you can take that guideline to your consultant, your head of department, and request them that I want this to be implemented. Okay, you have or I want this to be adopted by our department. And then you, after its implementation, 2 3 months later, you check the results. Okay, how are the outcomes of implementing that guideline? And after that, you data collect. Okay, you get it approved, you get it signed, you present it to the juniors or the seniors in that hospital. And then taking it further, I'll illustrate the whole process, but I'm just giving an overview at that point. So you can take that audit in your home countries too. You just need a guideline that has to be implemented by authority in that department or in that hospital, and then you evaluate the performance of that guideline, that how it has impacted the patient outcome or a treatment outcome or a surgery outcome. So why you need an audit? To give you an overview for your appraisal and revalidation requirements. For example, if you are GMC registered, you will need a revalidation after 5 years. So for that purpose, you need an audit. It also gives you point for your portfolios because it reflects how you are progressing in your career, your CPD points, your clinical grooming in yourself. It reflects that. It's a training requirement for junior doctors. The doctors who are working in CT1, SHO level, or CT2 level, or ST1, ST2 levels, they need audits to showcase that they are, apart from their clinical side, they are working uh, on these sectors too. So it's a very potential instrument for maintaining and improving clinical standards. That's why it's needed. And it can provide information needed to show that your service is effective. Effective means it's giving you a good clinical outcome, it's cost effective, and it ensures that we are going ahead with our approach. So this is what I'm talking about, that firstly, you have to identify the problem. Where is the problem? Okay, for example, if you are getting high infection rates in the hospital, post-surgery, for example, the waiting time is too much for a scan to happen after the admission of the patient. For example, if there is a very long waiting time for a patient to be seen by a senior doctor after a junior review in the A&E. So this is the problem that you have identified. Then you have to define the standards. Okay, what is the standard? Every trust has some kind of guideline that they work on. In the UK, they have some certain pattern of or work ethic they are following. So you have to take whatever is going on, you have to collect data on that. And now how you can collect data? You can make a questionnaire. Okay, you can give it to the fellow doctors, colleagues in that department, and you have to, or you can just uh, take out a sample size of interviewing people. Okay, you can do both ways. And after collecting data, you have to analyze it. What are the results of that data? How people are thinking about it, or how it is affecting the patient outcome. And then if the if there is a fault in the system, or if there is a problem in the system, then you have to implement the change. If the implement of the change could be a new guideline that has been generated by any society or any organization that is world known or world renowned. After implementing that change, or that can be your own input, but it should be a scientific input gone through a randomized controlled trial or a study. After that, after implementing that change, because you need a solid ground for that change to be implemented, you have to re-audit that what were the previous results, and after implementing, how much we have improved. Okay, that it is also called closing of the loop. Okay, this is also called closing of the loop. Sometimes this term confuses people. So when we re-audit, we close the loop. Okay, we have completed one circle, we identified the problem, we knew the standard, we got the overview that what is the standard and how it was how it was affecting our outcome, or it does have any uh, effect on our delivery system. And then there was a problem, you implemented the change, and then you re-audited it, that how much we have improved from the previous result. And then it goes on and on. So we are in a continuous process of improving things. To make it more simplified, firstly, we need a problem. Okay, then we need to identify it. Then we need to choose a method, a questionnaire, data collection, or sampling we can do. And then we need to analyze it again, that are we achieving it what we want to achieve, or why we are not achieving it. Then we have to facilitate the process and implement the change. Okay, we have to do something to make things better. A new benchmark needs to be introduced, or we have to redesign the whole system. And then we again collect the data to see the change we have implemented is bringing us any results, or has it made things worse. And then we have to again start this cycle. This goes on, and we are in a continuous process of improvement. So these are the few things or a few points that we need to consider when we want to start a clinical audit. If you have any question, you can ask, and this is my email address. If you want to approach me for any guidance regarding clinical audits, I'll be happy to help you out. Any questions, please?
Safir, we will ask the questions after finishing of the next talk.
Okay.
Here I will invite Dr. Usman Amir Khan. What is your reflection on this talk and what you would like to add? And then we will move to the research part. Dr. Usman Amir Khan, are you with us?
I am very much. Safir, thank you very much. Excellent talk. You picked up at all the basic and important points. There is so much to do in hospitals as far as audit is concerned. You know, every day when we go around the ward rounds, you could pick up 5, 6, maybe even more topics to do audit. It's not a problem to do an audit, but the problem is to do it properly and have proper guidance. All hospitals have research departments, even small hospitals have research departments. So whatever you think, as Safir has said, you have to discuss it with your consultant. Registrar, you should have a registrar on your side also who would help you with the audit, and your consultant. And then you have to, it will have any value only when it's registered with your research department. Gone are the days 10, 15 years ago when we just went and did audits and research department was never involved. Now all audits have to be registered if we think they are going to make any difference, or even for if you want to present it in a meeting or you want to go ahead and publish it, it must be registered with your research department. So that is a very important point which you must do. And they will haunt you then. They will come back to you and make sure that you have completed the audit, the cycle is complete. So in a way it's good because they will keep asking you. Even if you are a bit lax, they'll make sure that you go ahead and complete the audit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Dr. Chaman Aruj.
Sure, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Safir. I think that was very comprehensive. Dr. Usman for giving us an overview. So now we'll move on to Dr. Sarah Masroor Jilani. She is originally, she has completed her MBBS from Aga Khan University Hospital in Karachi. And then she has also done her clinical research associate training in Aga Khan. And she worked there for approximately, I think, 8-9 months. I think that's what it is. And then since then, she has moved to the UK and pursuing career in pediatric surgery. Currently, she's working at ST1 level in the UK, and she's going to talk about some more details about how we can improve our CV with our research projects. Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Sarah.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Roj, for the introduction. Right. So I'm going to be talking about the research part of this talk. Dr. Safir has very, very extensively spoken about audits, and he's done a very nice job because he's given us a little bit of history about why the audits are so important in this country and how we should sort of start earlier rather than later in terms of doing audits. So a lot of people already know backgrounds regarding clinical research and why it's important. what I'm trying to achieve is to keep this presentation very, very simplistic. And first of all, we'll try and understand what is the difference between all these terminologies that may be very new to most of our viewers, or they might have heard these before, but it's very difficult to understand the difference between a research or an audit or a quality improvement project if you've not worked in the UK before, or you've not gone through all these processes before. So first, we'll try and get some clarification on these three. Then we will talk a little bit about what different types of research methodologies are there out there, so that we understand what we're trying to achieve and what we can actually do back in our home countries, because some of the research methodologies might be difficult to do in when you have very limited resources and you're not in the UK. So we'll talk a bit about that, and then getting support. How do you get departmental support? How do you get support in terms of getting your research published, where to publish it? And I'll talk a little bit about my experience all throughout the presentation anyways. Right, so why are we sort of so inclined into being motivated to do research? So because when you're not in the UK and you're back home in your own country, you're more inclined to sort of get clinical experience, get better at clinical experience, and we sort of, the audit bit and the research aspects of our career development are shadowed over by just becoming a good clinical physician. So you need to understand that as a healthcare professional in the UK, working as part of the NHS, every training pathway will require you to do some sort of research at some point in time. You have points for research in all training applications anyways. It's also part of your career progression to do audits and quality improvement projects as well. As far as when you are going to apply for training, or even if you're outside of training within the UK or working within the NHS, you still have to do these things because it's part of your personal developmental goals, and you have to sort of let your clinical supervisor or whoever your educational supervisor is know that you're sort of involved in multiple things apart from your clinical practice. Right. This is just a slide to basically point out what is the difference between research and audits and quality improvement projects. So before coming into the UK personally, obviously it took me a while to understand what is the difference between these three. So a research is just designed to create new knowledge, or you have a hypothesis and you're testing that hypothesis. So what you're essentially trying to do is you are going to perform a research study where you involve allocating patients to different intervention groups, and you're trying to find out which intervention is better. And it's just to test a specific hypothesis that you as a clinician might have. An audit is, like Dr. Safiya mentioned, is designed to sort of look at whether the practices within your hospital or whether the practices within your healthcare setup are good enough when you compare them to, let's say, a national guideline. So it sort of asks, when you're doing an audit, you're asking the question, does the service that your hospital or your department is providing, is it reaching a predetermined standard? And that's why the whole premise or purpose of your data collection is just so that you can understand whether you're reaching the standard that you need to. There's no sort of patient allocation, you're not testing a hypothesis, you're not creating new knowledge, you're just trying to see whether you meet a certain standard set by a specific guideline that you might be following. Clinical audits and quality improvement projects, these two terms are used very interchangeably when you're actually doing audits. So the only difference between an audit and a quality improvement project would be that are you sort of adding something new while doing it? So let's say you do an audit within your department. We can take an example of something very simple. For example, when I started my first job in the NHS, I did it in orthopedics, and whenever a patient would come through to A&E, we had to clerk as the junior doctor. So we had to clerk the patient in, and we had nothing to clerk the patient on. So we didn't have a pro forma or a clerking document. We just had plain sheets of paper. That was one of the problems that I found. And then what you're doing is you're auditing whether that plain sheet of paper is good enough as a clinical documentation tool. And because everyone differs in documentation, every junior doctor has a different way of documenting, it wasn't. So that was just the audit. Now, how to turn this into a quality improvement project? You introduce something new to the service. So you introduce a new clerking sheet or a new clerking performer, and then you re-audit that. So whenever you're introducing something new after doing an audit to improve the services, that can be counted as a quality improvement project. Right. So there are different types of research methodologies. We don't have to get into detail. This is going to be very, very simple on what we can achieve if we're just starting off into research. We have no idea how to actually do research in the first place. What's important to remember is that you need to start early. So you can start when you're a medical student, actually. Most of my research, in my personal experience, has not been in the UK, has not been within the NHS. It has always been, I did most of my research back in my home country where I'm from. I'm from Pakistan. So there are a lot of things that you can start. And when you start doing research or get involved into research, you sort of, the experience that gives you, it's very, very helpful because you can then understand how research is done. So just a quick example of what types of things you can do. So maybe most of you might already know the different types of research studies you could do. So things like case reports, case series, these are very relatively easier to do, especially back in your home country, because you might have a lot of clinical influx of patients within your hospital, and you might find a very important or interesting case. So doing a case report or doing a case series might be something that you can achieve back in your home country, even if you have limited resources or very little support. The other things that are achievable when you don't have a good research department or you don't have support, sometimes are doing systematic reviews, because you don't actually have to do a practical experimental study where you meet patients and need to follow them up. You're just reviewing literature and then making sort of, you're collecting all the facts from that literature and making a conclusion out of it. So that is something that you can essentially try and achieve back in your home country. How to go about this, we will talk a bit about this later. Right. So when you're doing research, there's, especially here in the UK and within the NHS, this always comes up as to how important that research is. And the tool that they use here and broadly, whenever you do research, the tool that is used is what level of evidence are you providing? So anything that's sort of a case study or a case report is not a very strong research study, per to say, just because it's an account of one patient. Whereas if you're doing something like a systematic review or a meta-analysis, that's you sort of amalgamating all the research that's been already done on a particular topic and then coming up with a conclusion. So that obviously has a much better level of evidence, and it's sort of more relied on, if that made sense. So now, there are a few things to consider in your home country when you're delving into research. What is achievable in your home country? That will depend on how much support you have. It's very easy to do a few things. It's very hard to do a few other things.
Whether you have clinical management systems, do you have patient records? Do you have a department that takes care of all the clinical records? If you need to do research and go retrospectively and look back into patient records to find something. So these are things that you will need to know and things that you need to consider. So things to
country. How supportive is your department? Is there a consultant who's really into research? Can you talk to them, maybe liaise with them? Is there one of your registrars or residents who's very interested in research? Maybe you can sort of discuss with them. There are other professionals that may be interested in research. You can look at whether within your country, do you have things like research fellow posts, or do you have any sort of initiative that's been started within your department or your hospital regarding research? A lot of the times, and a lot of people I think don't know this, is that sometimes, especially if your hospital is a large tertiary care center and it's associated with the university, sometimes your library or you may have a very dedicated library or a research support service within the library, or within your hospital that might help you and guide you. So this, for example, in my case, I wasn't aware, but my hospital was associated with a university, and they did have support if you wanted to do research. The type of support that they can provide is access to journals or access to articles when you want to do literature searches and things like that. And those are most often than not free accesses. The other things to consider when you're doing research back home in your country is sometimes it might be easier to start off with just case reports and case studies. For example, if there's any medical student who's joined us today, you can sort of express your interest if you find an interesting case. Talk to your consultant, talk to your registrar, talk to your residents, talk to the most senior people in your team, and you can publish that case as a case study or as a case report. Once you get more seasoned with research, you can even get in touch with people if they're doing systematic reviews, if there's a research project going on. So these are things you need to sort of ask and find out. My advice would be that you start as early as you can, just to get an idea of how it's done, even if it's not something that's publishable by the end of it, but it helps knowing how the whole process works. And if you get involved in any project within your hospital, in your home country, try and get a recommendation letter from the consultant who's leading the project or from your registrar, just so that you can use it as evidence when you apply for jobs in the UK or when you come to the UK. If you're struggling to find a topic for research, one thing that sort of helps is if you look in your specific specialty, the journals that you have for your specific specialty. For example, you work in urology, so you look at the European Journal for Urology, look at what they've published or what kind of studies they've done, and maybe you can sort of reproduce that within your setting or within your country or within your hospital.
Right. So like I mentioned, obviously it can be very time consuming as well. So try with the easier things. So if you can do a case report or a case series, that might be easier to do. Doing things like case control studies and cohort studies, it may be very difficult, especially if you're not in the UK where you have no sort of infrastructure to follow those patients up. Obviously, research takes time, and however, it is worthwhile if you get it published. And it's very important to find professionals with similar interests. So if anyone within your department is interested in research, junior doctors or consultants, get in touch with them. With research, it's very important that whatever type of study you do, you get consent if there are patients involved or if you have to look through records. You also need to know whether your particular hospital or your particular university has an ethical approval board, similar to what we do in the UK, where you have a whole clinical governance department, which takes care of all the ethical problems within research. If you are aware of which journal you're aiming for, it's very helpful, especially if you're doing a case report, because every journal has their own consent form if you want to publish a case report. So you need to know which journal you're going to publish in if you're doing a case report or a case series. Right, where to look for support to publish. So if you have a separate research department within your hospital, in your home country, in the hospital that you work, you can ask the library services. Sometimes they have institutional access to certain journals. The only reason I mention this is because if your library services has institutional access to certain journals, you can publish in those journals for free without paying the article processing fees. If it's very difficult to publish your research in a good impact factor journal. The only reason being because the quality of research that these good impact factor journals accept is, the level is very, very high, but it's always worth trying. So how to go about this is that if you can always try and aim high and submit it in the journal of your choice. If you can't, you can always go down and submit it to a local journal, which is peer reviewed. always make sure that if you're submitting or you're aiming for publication, that that particular journal is indexed on a database such as PubMed. The other things to consider is, does your hospital or university fund your research, or will you have to pay out of pocket if you're paying for the journal fees? There are two sources that I've added here. So one is Curious, which is a free online platform if you want to publish your research. They have a very good user-friendly platform where you can get your article published free of cost more often than not. The other is a directory of open access journals. So this is an entire directory of all the journals that publish for free, and they have no article processing fees or hidden charges. It's a directory for all specialties. So you'll have medicine, urology, surgery, everything. The other thing that you could consider if you're interested in publishing in a very high impact journal, which has a lot of fees that you need to pay beforehand, is consider emailing that journal to ask for a fee waiver. This does work at times because I've tried from my home country in Pakistan, and I've emailed certain journals, and they have sort of taken off the complete fees altogether just because Pakistan is considered a low or middle income country. So these are things that you can consider. Right, a few things that you guys might be aware of already. When you're publishing, it's very important to know what the journal impact factor is. What that basically means is how frequently is the journal being read and how many publications within that journal are being cited and recited, and how many people are using those articles and reading through them. So the higher the impact factor, the more likely that your particular article will get seen and shared. The other things to consider are, now, because everything is so super specialized and subspecialized, every subspecialty has its own journal. So publishing, for example, a urology paper in a medicine journal or in a very generic journal might not be the best case because it might get rejected. So things to consider would be, do you want to send it to a subspecialty journal because it's more likely to get accepted there because it's more relevant for them. So in terms of how to do research within your home country, I've told you a lot of things to consider and how to get going. In terms of research opportunities, if you've already gotten your first job in the UK or you are working in the UK, to get in touch with your educational and clinical supervisor to ask them who in the department is doing ongoing research. Sometimes you have academic clinical fellows, you have registrars who are academic registrars who dedicate some of their time just to research. They can get you in touch with those people. You have PhD fellows rotating within your hospital. You need to also know whether you're in a tertiary case center, whether a district general hospital, irrespective, every hospital in the NHS will have a research department, and you will find more support here than versus back home. You will obviously have better funding here because you have a dedicated team of professionals within the research department, especially in tertiary case centers which perform randomized controlled trials. They have very large research departments and they have a lot of professionals, including nurses and other research clinical fellows who help you with all these things. Right. So I think my top tips would be to start early. So start in medical school. So I started when I was in third year of medical school. And the way I started was that while I was doing a ward round in surgery, there was this very interesting case. And I went to the consultant and asked them how rare is the case. And they said that they've never seen this before. It might be very, very rare. So I went back home and did a literature search. And then the consultant sort of got in touch with me and said, this could be a case report, a potential one. And I had never written a case report before, and I had never done research before. But I think what I'm trying to get at is that if you're in that situation as well, take the initiative, start early. Even if you're a medical student, if you're a junior doctor, even if you're a registrar at this point, start early and take that initiative and find out how to actually write in a manuscript. You can ask your consultants, you can ask people around you, they will help you out in how to do this. But if you start early, get in touch with the people who would help you out and during your placements and express interest, basically. You can consider doing separate research posts. It's very difficult to get these. It might not be applicable in the setting that you're in, but when you start with smaller things, you can essentially build up on your research portfolio and be able to do larger things like systematic reviews and meta-analysis. And try and get things published as well, and aim for the higher journals, just because even if you get rejected, just the process of submitting the journal yourself or your manuscript yourself, and then making the alterations will help you understand how to write a good manuscript. So that entire process helps you and helps you learn on how to do this. Right. This is a very brief intro of what I think how you can achieve doing research within your home country. If you have any further questions, or you didn't understand anything, or you would like the links in the slides, please feel free to email me.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Let's have a drill, and then I will go to Dr. Usman Mir Khan for reflection. Let's start a drill between you and me. So you did your first case report. You mentioned that you saw a case in the ward. You went to your consultant. He told you it's rare. You went to your home. You searched that how many such cases are reported, right? Then what you did?
So in terms of my experience, what I ended up doing was that once I did the literature search, I realized you realize that there are not many cases reported on this particular presentation. So once you're done the literature search, I went back to my consultant and said that this is quite rare. And he said, this could be a case report. So would you like to write
writing?
So how I went on about it is I went through the literature search again, saw each and every article to see how a case report is actually written. So these were all published case reports. So if you read through a lot of research work, you can sort of get an idea of how to write it and how to frame your manuscript in a way. Then obviously you then have to start creating a draft. And you get the patient's clinical details, you get in touch with your ethical committee, get consent from the patient using the consent form. Once you've done all of that and you've gotten all the clinical details, you start writing a manuscript, and then you ask for help. So I went back to the consultant and asked, can you check my manuscript? Is there anything missing? Do you think we need to get someone else to have a look at it? So get it internally peer reviewed, and they will sort of point out your mistakes and help you realize what is important and how to actually write a manuscript. Once that is done, you can then sort of think about submitting it to a journal.
Okay, so what I understand, you picked the case, your consultant agreed, you went through the other case reports, you made an idea that how these case reports are written, and then you started writing your manuscript. You wrote patient details, that rare presentation, what was the diagnostic workup done. You also wrote the follow-up. You also wrote about how many case reports are already done.
Yeah,
this.
exactly.
And what is the literature review about that. And you also put references. You went to ethical review committee definitely before starting this to get a consent that if you can write, and you fill the consent form. And then you went to the consultant and peer review to get it checked. And then you submitted it for publication.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Dr. Usman Mir Khan, what is your reflection, what Sarah has told us about research? Some practical tips to simplify the things for the audience.
First thing, the research is a difficult thing in the sense it needs a lot of patience. It needs you to sit down. And we must commend Sarah that she, as a third-year student, she took the initiative, not her team or her consultant didn't. She saw an unusual case, she took the initiative, she spoke to the consultant and the team. That's what you need to do. Because when we are training, when we are medical students, we don't realize that it makes a hell lot of a difference in finding jobs in your future. Because at that time we think, why sit down and write these 2-3 pages of something boring? What are we going to get out of it? but that's what makes you. As Sarah has said, for Pakistan is generally case studies or systemic reports. Those are the best one. In fact, you could do so many case studies over there, so many unusual cases come, especially, I mean, I'll talk about surgery, and I'm delighted that both our speakers are training in surgery, which is wonderful. You know, so many unusual cases come. You go to theater, you see so many unusual laparotomies happening over there. So there is a lot to write in Pakistan on such things as compared to over here, actually. In the West, you don't see those things. Here, yes, you do more of randomized controlled trials. You can do that because most of the departments are well equipped, even in smaller hospitals, but especially in university hospitals, they have enormous budgets, you know. So those are the places, you know, even in a place like Macclesfield, we have 12 research nurses who are always doing, you know, gene first study or fit study or something or the other is always happening. So for Pakistan, yes, systemic reviews are not difficult to do actually, and they do get published, but you just need to pick up on the trend, what is going on. Like you can do a systemic review now on COVID-19 publications. That would be a good topic to do. What else? Good clinical practice is something which when you are in UK, you must do before you can do any kind of study or research. Your research department will not accept you unless you've done a good clinical practice course. It's an online course. You can do it sitting in Pakistan also. And what research systems to use? When I was training and earlier, I used IBM SPSS system, which I remember I bought in Pakistan actually initially for a few hundred rupees, the CD, and I studied it. So IBM SPSS system is good, Stata is good, R is good for your statistics, but SPSS gives you a general broad guideline. And for graphs, I used Graph Prism, GraphPad Prism. I still use that actually. I don't use it now, my registrars use it, but those are the systems you need to probably look at. And as far as your data is concerned, the most important thing for you is to understand where this data has come, what is the source of it, and how can you use it. As long as you understand this, then the publications are not a problem. As Sarah has said, to publish in high impact journals is difficult unless you are with a consultant who's already publishing or a department who publishes in the high impact journals. It becomes difficult. But there are a lot of other journals. But you must be aware of a lot of journals are coming from America now. In the last 3 years, I have seen a really outburst of new journals, emails coming, and they all want $500 or $600 before they'll publish your articles. Don't get into that, because you know the person who reads it also, I would know, yeah, okay, they have paid for their publication. It doesn't have a good impact. And start when you are Pakistan, there is College of Physicians and Surgeon Journals is there. Pakistan Research Society Journal is there. Start publishing in that. They are good journals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Usman Amir Khan. Some people have raised their hands in our participants list. I would encourage them that they can ask their question in the chat section, where we will try to answer the question, or we will pass this question to our speakers. Chairman, do you have any questions? Then I will go back again to Sarah and Dr. Usman and grill Sarah again about systemic reviews, how to publish them.
Sure. There are a few questions over here. I think I will direct these questions to Sarah. There's somebody who is asking, what is the difference between case report and case study? And I would add systemic review along with that. So if you could please explain us what is case report, what is the case study, and what is a systemic review? Thank you.
Right. So a case report and a case study is essentially the same thing. A case report is basically if you've seen an unusual case or an unusual presentation of a clinical case, you sort of just to publish that particular presentation because it's not well known, it's not well published in literature, it's a very rare pathology, you sort of do what is called a case report or a case study. If you have, let's say, 2 or 3 patients come into your hospital or into your department with the same presentation, which is very rare, you can do a case series where you go, when you're publishing your manuscript, you go with case 1, case 2, case 3, and you basically give a detailed description of how to present it, what investigations were done, how did you find out and reach a diagnosis, and then you sort of discuss of how rare it is and what management your particular department did with that patient. How that helps other people is because the case is so rare, other people will read this in a journal and then sort of get an idea, okay, so this particular hospital did this with this patient. So then, because there are no guidelines for very, very rare cases, which come as case reports, how that's different from a systematic review. So a systematic review, as the word says, is a review, which means that all you're doing is, for example, Dr. Khan mentioned about doing COVID-19 systematic review. So there'll be so many, in the last 2 years during the pandemic, there'll be so many articles published on the COVID-19 pandemic and how to treat COVID-19. You can sort of look at all the articles that were published in the last 2 years and sort of compile all the knowledge you get from them and the data and the results that they got in the management of patients with COVID-19. And then you can sort of make a conclusion that these many papers support the use of this particular drug, or these many papers support the use of this particular intervention. So that would be a systematic review where you're reviewing a lot of papers retrospectively. So that's the main difference.
Thank you, Sarah. And there was, you mentioned those, yes, please.
Sorry, can I say something over here? Sarah is absolutely right. They are essentially the same, but case studies usually is slightly more in depth, quite long report, usually used by psychologists to describe their case reports, and by psychiatrists. By physicians and surgeons, our case reports are small. They are known as case reports, and case studies slightly more in depth. That's the only difference. Otherwise, they are the same.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Mon. There was a comment for you I would like to mention before we move on to the next question. This is from Syed Muhammad. He's saying that I will be joining Macclesfield next month. Will it be appropriate if I approach you for guidance regarding research?
Yes, why not? Where is he joining? Which department?
I'm not sure. Probably he will mention that.
No. There was another question which I couldn't answer from Abdul Manan or somebody. That where can they do a good clinical practice course? The site is https://learn.nihr, which stands for National Institute of Health Research.ac.uk. If you go on NIHR site, you will be able to see good clinical practice courses there. There will be for GP, for hospital, things like that. So you can go on National Institute of Health Research site in UK, and you will be able to see courses there. We have all done their course for our publication research or to get involved in clinical trials, because your hospital department will ask for two things: your CV and your GCP certificate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Usman. And there was this comment about, they were saying that I worked on two research, this is from Nazia Nazir. She's saying that I worked on two research topics during COVID, still not published because our journals in Pakistan might not interested. It was on doctor's team working with COVID patients about stress and well-being. I think, Nazia, that's a very good topic and it definitely needs to be published. It doesn't matter if a few of the journals have not accepted it. Take that with a pinch of salt. Take the whatever observations that they have given, because when a research paper is refused, they would always give you feedback. Try to learn from that feedback, correct those shortcomings or whatever they have mentioned, correct them, and then try with some other paper. I think this is a very good topic, and this will get published with some more, probably a bit of more effort. And then there was another question about the open access journals. I think, Sarah, you were talking about them. They were asking, are they PubMed indexed? I think most of them they are, but yes, I would forward that to you, please.
So most of the journals that, if we're talking about the link that I mentioned, or the free journals, so most of them are. The actual website, or that directory which I mentioned, it gives you a link to the actual website of that journal, and it does have sort of info about that particular journal. Where is it indexed? Is there any article processing fees? What's the impact factor? So if you just go on that directory, it'll give you a lot of information about whichever journal you select. But most of them are indexed, yes.
What Dr. Aruj has just said, one shouldn't get disheartened. There is a reason for which your articles are rejected. Our articles still rejected. I did an paper on COVID-19, I think in October 20 or September 20, and it got published straight away. The journal took it because it was in the early days. And then last year we kept on submitting, and I think 4 or 5 journals rejected it. Finally, 6th accepted it. It happens. So, you know, there is always a lesson to be learned. And it's not necessarily that your research is not good or your article is not good, but at times the peer reviews on the other side may think that it's not good. But there is always some corrections to be made. And you should, I think, not always aim for the British Medical Journal or Journal of Gastroenterology and all that, which are very high impact factor journals. Aim for journals which are not that high impact also, and they'll publish your research. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Sarah, again, there is a drill between you and me about how to write a systemic review. Like, we got a topic. There are few publications about that. So you make a plan to write a systemic review. How you will start that?
So the systematic review, it's obviously going to be a long process, one thing. The first thing, obviously, you need to do, because if you're doing a systemic review, you need to first do a literature search and find out the relevant articles. So you start off with doing a search strategy, which is where you write down all the pertinent keywords that you will need when you're doing the literature search, and you need to sort. So there are guidelines on how to do systemic reviews. Cochrane has very nice guidance on how to do meta-analysis and systemic reviews. So basically, there are a few steps you have to go through. The first thing being you need to do a literature search, which means you will develop a search strategy and find out, use 2 or 3 different medical journal databases like PubMed, or Cochrane itself is a database. Run your search strategy on those databases, get all the relevant articles. Then you have to screen all those articles, which means you need to find out whether they're relevant to the topic that you're doing a review on. The screening process can take time. And obviously, when you're going to screen, you're going to sort of throw out the articles which are not very relevant, but you need to sort of make sure that you keep a track of what you're doing. Once you've gotten the relevant articles, you need to sort of do another type of screening where you take out all the relevant information from them. And what I did was I put it onto an Excel sheet, and depending on what your topic is, you might end up with 500 articles that you need to review. You might end up with 7,000, which means that obviously it's better to have a team doing this. It might be very cumbersome if you're doing it alone. Once you've sort of collaborated all your results into one Excel sheet or whatever format you use, you can then sort of start writing up and start forming the manuscript of how you went about it and what the conclusion was. You can sometimes, more often than not, you do a systematic review with the meta-analysis, which is just taking all that objective information of, let's say, if you're using a diagnostic test, what is the sensitivity of the diagnostic test, what is the specificity? So you look at all the journal articles which might have looked at it, you take those numbers and you put it into a software. There are a lot of softwares out there. The most commonly one that is used is RevMan, which is approved by the Cochrane database. And then you can sort of get a value of whether this is significant or it's not. And then you sort of, it's a long process, and every step of the way you have to sort of write every step of your way, your methodology, how you went about screening, which articles did you reject, what was your conclusion. And then by the end of it, you'll have a very long, lengthy manuscript. And then you reference everything.
Thank you very much. Safir, I believe there is a big project of APPS UK about audit and research, which we are going to announce today, and you being the pioneer of that project. Would you like to share the details with us? And then we will conclude the session with Dr. Usman Amir Khan remarks. Can you unmute yourself?
Thank you so much, Ali. So what we're gonna do is, we are pushing forward an idea, okay? As a Apps UK team, we are providing you an opportunity to get involved with us in our research projects, okay? For that, what you need to do is, you need to contact us. You can contact the official Apps UK email. You can give your idea and what you want to do, and you can basically you have to submit a proposal, or you can contact me. Okay, what is your idea of research, what you want to do, okay, how you want to do it. But there are certain prerequisites. Firstly, you have to be an Apps UK member, okay, so that we can provide you fully support in terms of your research, in terms of publishing your article, and whatever help you may need in terms of getting that thing done. And how we're going to do it is, we are forming a team of researchers, okay, who will collaborate and join hands in hands, and will take forward that project, and we will get the guidance from the esteemed members of the Apps UK, the senior members. Okay, they have published all over their lives. They have avid experience how to publish the article, how to get it done. So for that, you need to be a member of Apps, and then we will start that publication. You need to submit the proposal, and there are some projects and pipelines. If you don't have an idea, that's not a problem. You can submit that what you are good at, in which area your expertise lies. It could be in statistics, it could be in formatting, it could be in anything. And then we can collaborate with you, and we can start the project, and we will take it further on. Over to you, Dr. Ali.
Thank you very much, Safir. Can you write your email address in the chat section?
Yes.
So the idea is actually that APPS UK is launching this audit and research project where doctors from different hospitals and different countries will collaborate together, will share their expertise with each other. Someone is good at analyzing the data, someone is good at collecting the data, someone is good at writing the an article. So we will collaborate, we will make a group of 4 to 5 doctors, and we will start working on at least 4 to 5 publications at one time. That can be a meta-analysis, that can be a case report, that can be an audit. And then we will have the mentorship of the senior clinicians from APPS UK, who will provide us technical support and guidance where we will get stuck. And here I would like to request Mr. Khan that if he would like to lead this APPS UK project, then it will be a huge honor for us, as well as it will be extremely helpful for the junior doctors and IMGs. Mr. Khan.
I'll have to find time for it. Right. Yes, we will do that. I read the project which Dr. Hafiz had posted on the board, and I was thinking of commenting on it, but I never got around to it. What I was going to say was to the people who are participating today, that research degree is extremely important, a research job. Don't think that it's a waste for a year or 2 years. That is one of the most important bits of your career. It makes you really. Why do you think they have progress in the West? The only reason is research. There's no other reason. When we did research, we were also #1 in the world. So we must spend that year or 2 doing research. And even if you get the chance to do a PhD, why not? You know, it's a wonderful experience. It really broadens your horizons, your thinking changes, your outlook on life changes. It's so important. Yes, I read that proposal, Ali Raza, and it's good. I think what will be the most beneficial will be probably systemic reviews on that, because you wouldn't be able to as such do like a trial. So what if the UK hospital agrees to do the trial and the one in Netherlands or wherever your other in Germany, they may not be able to, or they may not have the funding or things like that. So I think the first project would be to start with a big systemic review, which you can do between 3-4 countries where doctors are. Choose a topic and do a big systemic review. Somebody is doing all the statistics, somebody is collecting all the data, looking at it, somebody is then writing it down, somebody is peer reviewing it. So that would be a good thing to do.
Thank you very much. Actually, this is the same guidance what we needed, and that's why we need a mentor like you. Dr. Ruth, concluding remarks by you, and then we end the session.
I think I have, looking at all these chat boxes, and I'm sorry if I was not able to answer all of those questions. I think overall the idea should be just hit any key to start. Really, it's all about the audit or your research projects. Basically, they originate from nowhere else, actually from your everyday hospital activity. You have many questions when you are seeing patients. You have many questions in your mind when you're working in a system, and you do have an idea in your mind that how we can improve the system. Those thoughts if they are elaborated in a systemic manner, that is what your audit is, that is what your quality improvement project is. If you collect data on that, that is called the audit. And when you give a proposal and you try and make an improvement in your system, that's the quality improvement project. Case reports, they would be like, you would be seeing interesting cases throughout your career, and it's worth reporting them. It's sometimes I have seen some doctors, they would ask the question, how do I write a case report? That's not a problem at all. When you have seen the case, when you have gone through the background, you have seen the investigations and everything, all the data is in your hand. All you need to do now is to write it. And there are so many case reports there on internet. You can go through them and you will find the guidelines, and you'll all you have to do is just write in the similar manner. You've got the case in your hand, and it's as simple as that. The thing is that we really have to start, and as you go, you will learn. I think that's what I have learned.
One question, Mr. Khan, if you can answer, it is technical, not for UK. Some of the doctors are working in primary and secondary care in Pakistan, where there is no any research review committee. And this is a problem in many countries of the world, where doctors are not working in a teaching hospital. And when they apply to publish an article in Curious or any international journal, they ask for a certificate by research review committee. I believe the administration of the hospital can give such a certificate, but if you can.
All those GP practices have local hospitals. They should get it registered over there.
Okay.
Like you are talking about the primary care. Isn't it?
Yeah, but I'm talking about other countries like Pakistan or India, Bangladesh, in their BHUs or DHQ or THQ hospitals, which don't have these research committees. And when an international journal asks for an evidence, if an ethical review, if it was approved by ethical review committee, what should be the body? I believe it should be MS or
yes.
the CEO of the health.
Yes, you are right there. A letter from there should suffice that. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you, everyone. And you can inbox us all the time on our APPS UK Facebook page. Our email addresses are there, and we are there to help you. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.